I have had many a revelation while collecting video games, and about 45 minutes ago I think I had another one. Before I tell you what the revelation was, let me tell you why I haven't uploaded a lot recently. It's not for me to make excuses, it's just a big juggling act at the moment. So about a month ago I started a new job, and I don't know how people work a job and do YouTube at the same time. I'm finding it very, very difficult. I used to do it like way back when, but I'm a lot older now. I just can't do it. I need to rest a lot more than I used to. So I'm finding it very difficult to juggle work and doing YouTube at the same time. So you may see infrequent videos from me, but I will continue to upload for as long as my body allows me to. On top of that, over Christmas for about 2 weeks, I was pretty unwell. I had the flu, which doesn't sound that bad, but it proper kicked my ass, and I just haven't really recovered. I've still got a cough, and it doesn't matter. You don't care, but that's why I haven't really uploaded much of anything at all. But the main reason why I'm telling you this is because I haven't been to CEX for well over a month at this point, purely because I've had too much going on or I've not been very well at all, and I haven't even looked at the website. So I had a little look at the website earlier. I was going to go into town today, but the weather is atrocious, so I thought, no, I'll just look at the website and see what's changed. And things have changed, but not in the way that I thought they were going to. And that led me to have this revelation, this epiphany, this thought process, if you will. So I was looking at Xbox 360 games because, of course, that's the main console I like to collect for, as you can probably tell. I was expecting to have seen prices go through the roof on certain games that I was thinking about buying not that long ago. I was thinking, well, they were 15, they're probably around 20 now. I mean, it's been a month or maybe even 5 weeks at this point. But no, that hasn't happened. In fact, in most cases, the complete opposite has happened. Games have actually dropped in price. And then I started thinking about it on a bigger scale. I used to make videos back a long time ago at this point now, predicting prices of games. Oh, buy this now while it's cheap. This is a hidden gem, buy it now while it's cheap. Those type of videos, you see them all the time, right? I stopped doing them because I kept getting them wrong, right? My opinion was that this game was absolutely going to go up in price, and then fast forward a month or 2 months and the game has either dropped or it's more or less the same price as it was. I'd get the odd one, right, where it would go up by like a tenner or something, but since then it's come back down again. It's no longer that sort of £30-40 game that I said it was going to be. So using my local store and Xbox 360 as an example here, so this is going to be a very small sample size, but you will see games that are up there in price and have just been creeping over time and are continuing to go up, or at least holding that high price. So Killer is Dead flew up over a year ago at this point, and the special edition has been around 70 quid for the longest time, and that's absolutely no exception. It's about 68 quid right now, and it's been there for, again, the longest time. There are other games that have held their price and continue to go up, and some of them are special editions, others are just like normal ones, like Bikini Samurai Squad, for example. I mean, who knew that that game would be £100, right? It's not worth that, because I don't actually think it's a particularly good game. However, it is £100. It's been creeping up in value over time. Do I see it going up? Do I see it coming down? Honestly, I couldn't tell you at this point. But as I scroll down the list and I'm looking for games that I wanted to add to my collection, Lollipop Chainsaw stood out to me a little bit because I remember it being more expensive than £45. Correct me if I'm wrong. So that has dropped. And I thought, well, that might be an anomaly. Let's continue to scroll. So I scroll down and I see Saw 2, which is a very bad example here because Saw 2 is not a good game. It's beyond not a good game. I wouldn't say it's terrible or the worst game I've ever played, but it's got a very poor story. It doesn't add anything that the first one didn't do. The first one is a good game, it's a solid game, especially if you're into Saw. The second one is more than double the price of the first for absolutely no reason whatsoever. It's one of those games that's expensive because it's expensive. It's just what it is, right? But as I continue to go down the list and we move on to the second page, I notice a lot of the games that I thought were going to go up in price have actually stagnated, and some of them have even come down in price, like Left 4 Dead 2, for example. That game was on a bit of a runaway. It went up to £20, it was going up even further. Orange Box is another one of those games. It was £8 once upon a time, then it went up, and it was up 18, 20, 25, now it's 15. And that made me think to myself, are these games ever going to go up, or are we only ever really going to see them fall in price from now on? Huge shout out to my channel members members, I do appreciate you greatly, and I apologise for neglecting you lately, but if you would like to become a channel member, the link is in the description. Get early access to these videos as well as the odd exclusive as well. Now with that being said, let's get back to the video. And that brought me on to the whole revelation, right? I thought to myself, no, I don't actually see the majority of the games on the Xbox 360 going up in price anymore. I mean, you'll get your peaks and troughs, you know, the orange box as an example. Yeah, it'll probably go up to £18 before it comes back down to 12, but I can actually see it going back down to 12, and in fact, I can see it going even cheaper again. And it's the same for Left 4 Dead, and you know, maybe the odd Spider-Man game will go up in price and it'll hold its price and maybe even go up through the roof again. But Spider-Man 3, one of those games that has gone up to 18, 20 quid, and it's now back down to 15. And there is a chance it'll go back up to 18, but there is every chance it'll come back down to 12. And they're games that tend to peak and trough and hover in around the same price all the time. There are so many games on the Xbox 360 that are affordable to buy. 2 years ago, if you'd said to me, is the Xbox 360 an affordable console to buy for, I would have said it is, but it won't be for long, because these prices are spiking and they're going to continue to go up and they won't come back down. And fast forward 2 years, and now I'm saying, actually, I think the Xbox 360 is a fantastic console to collect for. It's got really good graphics in most cases. I mean, not every game, but I mean, every console has their bad apples. But in terms of affordability, you can buy into the Xbox 360 cheap enough. The consoles themselves, they are actually creeping, if I'm honest, but they're not that expensive to buy. And if you've got a newer console, an Xbox One or a Series X, a lot of the games are backward compatible. But even the 360s themselves, you can get a solid 360 console for like 40, 50 quid these days. It's not a lot of money to spend on a console that's going to give you hours and hours of entertainment, and the games, they're very, very affordable. Okay, 2, 3, 4 years ago, the majority of the games on the 360 were under 15 quid, and I mean the majority. There were very few games above 20 quid. Now there are an awful lot of games above 20 quid. Some of them are even above 100, which 3, 4 years ago was almost unheard of on the 360. But you can get some absolute bangers on the 360 for under a tenner. In fact, the majority of the games are under a tenner, really, in the grand scheme of things. It did make me think as well then, so is the PS2 an expensive console to collect for? And much like the Xbox 360, there are some expensive games, more so on the PS2. So for example, Kuon is £585. I think that used to be £650, so that has actually come down. Rule of Rose, I think another game that used to be stupid money. I mean, don't get me wrong, £375 for a game is stupid money, but I think it used to be nearly double that, so that has come down. But as you scroll down the page, I'm only looking at 2 stores for sort of a very small sample size here, but the games drop off in price massively. I mean, like Harry Potter boxed with manual, £75, and then the next game underneath is 45, and then 32, and then we come all the way down. And you know, I'm on the first page, and I've included rarities here in the very bottom of the first page that started off at 500 and something pounds, 18 with the Suffering. So we're already down at 18 quid on the first page. So these games for the PlayStation 2, okay, you can get some expensive ones, but the majority of them are actually affordable and you can buy into the PS2. When you think about it, this console is over 25 years old and a lot of the games are still under a tenner. You can buy an awful lot of games and an awful lot of quality on the PS2 for a few quid here or there. The Simpsons game is a good example here because on the Xbox 360 and on the PS3, this game is now fairly expensive. It's like £25-30 plus, or at least it was last time I looked, which was a long time ago. For all I know, it's like £4, but I think it's an expensive game, right? Whereas on the PS2, it's only £8. And Canis Canem Edit, which is basically Bully, right? That is 8 quid on the PS2, whereas on the 360, it was 15. It might have gone up since then. I don't know what it is now, but it's nearly, if not double the price. And these are the same games. And they just don't seem to ever really go up that much in price. And if they do go up, they come back down again. So what is the deal? Are these games ever going to be expensive? And that's when I started thinking, why do these games never really go up in price? Why do we see PS2 games that are, you know, a few quid here or there and they never really go up much? And if they do go up, they always come back down again. And why is it happening on the 360? Everyone thought the 360 was going to fly. They were removing everything from the online store. People started buying into the hype. They were jumping on the bandwagon. People were buying games they wouldn't normally buy, and then fast forward 6 months, 12 months, and the prices are almost rebounded all the way back down to where they were. Okay, there's a little bit of inflation here or there, but generally speaking, you can buy into the 360 and have yourself a nice collection for not much more than you could have done 2 years ago. So are these games ever going to go up, and why don't they ever move? Now, first off, what I decided to do was I went back to the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo days, and I was thinking, well, why are those games expensive? And why is it that you can't really buy a complete game on a Mega Drive, for example, for less than a tenner anyway? I mean, you can find the odd bargain. You could go on eBay and I'm sure you could find like a European Club Soccer or FIFA International Soccer or something for, I don't know, £5 delivered, complete with a manual. But for the most part anyway, if you want to find a Mega Drive game in good condition, complete with a manual, it's going to cost you a tenner regardless of what it is. And then if you move up into the more sought after games, even games like Quackshot, for example, which is a very common game and it's not that sought after if we're honest, but if you want to find it in good condition, complete with a manual, it'll cost you more than a tenner. Whereas if I want to buy Casper and the Ghostly Trio on the PlayStation 2 in good condition with a manual, £2.50, and that game is well over 20 years old at this point. Is it ever going to go up in price? Probably not. So the reason Super Nintendo games are expensive, we kind of get it, right? It makes sense. They have cardboard cases, cardboard is perishable, and that's why the majority of Super Nintendo games, complete, box, manual, all the rest of it, it's going to be expensive because cardboard disintegrates over time and it breaks and it rips and it scratches and it just falls apart. Mega Drive games don't have that problem because they have hard shell cases, and that's why they don't really cost as much as Super Nintendo games in my opinion. But on top of that, compared to the amount of games that were made for the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox 360, the Mega Drive, I mean, they're scarce. There weren't that many made in comparison, so that's another reason why that they are far more expensive than your average PlayStation 2 game. But then I started thinking about the dreaded remaster, the remake. If someone went out of their way, and I'm not saying it hasn't been done, because it absolutely has been, right? Sonic has been remade and remastered to death, but there are plenty of games on the Mega Drive that have never seen a remaster, they've never seen a remake. And I'll go back to Quackshot again as an example here. That game will never see a remaster, because even if you pour loads of money, time, effort, and love into it, yes, it would be a very good game now, but it would still look like a Mega Drive game. And for the most part, people don't want to be sat down on their PlayStation 5 playing a 40-year-old Mega Drive game, even if it has been remastered with love and so much attention, because you can still tell this is a Mega Drive game I'm playing. You get the odd one, you know, like the Lion King and the Aladdin remaster, and you get the Jungle Book thrown in, and there are a couple of others dotted around the place, and they're enjoyable for what they are, but you know, you can play it for 5 minutes and then think to yourself, I'm playing a Mega Drive game, and that is off-putting to a lot of people. But a lot of the games on the Mega Drive and Super Nintendo, and even further back still, they don't get remakes, they don't get remasters. People don't tend to touch them. Only the beloved, the Lion Kings, the Aladdins, those are the only ones that ever really get the attention. You don't see Desert Strikes getting remakes. You don't really see much of any of those type of games. You know, the games that we hold dear, people of my age who grew up with a Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo, you don't really get those remakes, despite the fact that I would absolutely buy an Urban Strike or a Desert Strike remaster. It just won't happen. And that's why those games hold value, because it's the only way to play them. Whereas fast forward, and we're going to skip generations here, but fast forward to the PS2, and there are so many games on that platform that have cross-gen games. So King Kong as one that's just standing out in front of me right now, that is available on the Xbox 360, but it's also available on the PS2. Which version are you going to want to play? Probably the Xbox 360 version. I mean, to be fair, if I was saying play one, I would say don't play any of it because it's not a good game. But if you want to play it, are you going to play it on the more modern system, or are you going to play it on the older system? You're probably going to want to play it on the modern system, or the more modern system in the Xbox 360, because it's just going to run better, it's going to look better, it's just going to be a better experience altogether. And that is going to be the case for a lot of the games on a PS2 or an original Xbox. Nearly all of the Lego games are available on later consoles compared to that of the PS2. A lot of the sports games are the same way, and you have certain Call of Duties that made it onto the PS2 that are also available on the Xbox 360 and the PS3. They're remaking Star Wars Battlefront games now. Transformers games are on later consoles. The PlayStation 2 is a very cheap console to collect for. Always has been, and in my opinion it always will be. And one of the main reasons for that is because a lot of the games have cross-gen availability, remakes and remasters. So there's no real reason to go back and collect for the PS2 when you can get the majority of the games on later systems, or even later, like the most recent system, you can go and get a Star Wars Battlefront remaster, for example. There will absolutely be purists out there that will argue the point the original console, the original system is the way to play the original version of insert game here. And I'll take this as an example because it's literally the game I had behind me on the shelf. This is TMNT, which is just Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the PS2. This game is available on the Xbox 360. Does it run better? Does it look better? I don't really know. But because this is on the PlayStation 2, but it's also on the 360, if you have both systems and you're not loyal to one or the other, which version of this game are you going to play? Yeah, you're going to play the 360 version. Unless you are a purist who absolutely insists on playing it on the original hardware, which of course in this case is the PS2. And I don't really care what you say to me here, because there is absolutely no argument you could make apart from I'm loyal to Sony and I can't bring myself to buy it on a Microsoft machine or play it on any other system other than the PlayStation 2. That's the only argument you could make to me that would make me think you're in the right. I mean, there is no right or wrong. If you want to play it on the PS2 and you don't want to own it on the 360, then that's fine, go for it, right? It's your collection, it's your life, you do what you want to do. But there is no solid argument in my mind as to why you'd want to play this on a PS2 over the 360. I mean, by definition, it has to run better on a 360 because it's just far more powerful hardware, which means it's going to run at a higher FPS. Now, I don't have a side-by-side comparison. I don't know if it exists. I'm not going to look for it because that's just a random example off the top of my head. But there are so many of those examples that you can use this argument for anything. And yes, there will be some games that don't run better on a 360 compared to that of a PS2. And I know I'm jumping a generation and I'm jumping from PlayStation to Xbox. It's just the way that I did it. I went from a PS2 to a 360, so it's always the link that I make. And of course, it is a jump that a lot of people will have made as well, because the PlayStation 3 took so long to come out because it was delayed until March of 2006 as opposed to like November of 2005. People moved from Sony to Microsoft. I did. I couldn't wait. I needed the new system. The Xbox was out and I had to get it. So that's why I jumped, and that's why I always go from like a PS2 to a 360 when I'm talking about things. But obviously it's the same thing as the PS3, right? These games exist across platforms, and these games exist in the form of remasters. So one of the main reasons I think that these games on the PlayStation 2 are now on the 360, because we're seeing it again from 360 to Xbox One and Series X, games are getting cross-gen made, and they're also getting remasters and remakes and things. So people aren't going to want to go back and buy Sleeping Dogs on a 360 when they can buy the definitive edition on an Xbox One that has all the DLC wrapped into one disc. It looks better, it runs better. So that means that Sleeping Dogs on the 360, it's not worthless necessarily, but it will never be worth money. Even in 50 years' time, that game will still be £1. And of course, I don't have a time machine, I don't have a crystal ball, but that is my honest opinion. I mean, you just have to look at The Last of Us, and there are plenty of games. I mean, The Last of Us is just one of those, just in a sea of other games that have had this treatment, right? But The Last of Us came out on the PS3. It had remakes and remasters and things on the PS4, and it had exactly the same treatment for the PS5. And when the PS6 comes out, I almost guarantee it will get a definitive edition. It might come on one disc, it might be available as a download, but it will have enhancements to make it look even better again. And by which time we may even have a new Last of Us game, who knows? But that game has seen 3 generations of remakes or remasters. And it's going to continue to happen. And it's because the industry is running out of ideas, right? That's why Resident Evil has had so much of the treatment. It's why so many other games are getting that remake treatment. It's because there aren't as many ideas anymore as there were 10, 20 years ago. So they're just regurgitating what worked. Oh, this game was successful, it sold loads of copies. Let's just make it look better and people will buy it. And it sounds ridiculous to say it when you read it out loud and you say, oh, are people really going to fall for that? Yeah, they do. Every single time, without fail. There are definitely people who speak up and say, you're buying the same game you've already bought 3 or 4 times and they're still charging you 40, 50 quid. And people are like, yeah, I'm still going to buy it, because I want to play the best version of that game because it was such a good game, and that will continue to happen. But it does devalue the older versions of those games. So I'm not saying don't buy into the PS2, don't buy into the 360, because these games are not going to be worth anything in the future. If you buy games and you collect video games because you are thinking one day these are going to be worth a lot of money and I'm going to be able to sell them on and make myself a little fortune, you can't do that anymore. I don't think that's going to be something that can happen from the PlayStation 2 era and onwards. Yes, you will stumble on the odd game that you bought for a £5 that is now 40 quid. Killer is Dead for me is that example. I bought that in a car boot sale, £5, and now it's worth about 40. But I could show you 20 other games that I bought for £1 that are now worth £1. And that's because the majority of these games don't appreciate in value. Gears of War on the original Xbox 360, the original game that came out, I have that in good condition, manual, case, disc, everything. And it will never be worth more than I paid, ever. Because there is a definitive edition on the Xbox One, and there's probably going to be another definitive edition when we see another generation of console come out, because it is a system seller. It is one of the biggest IPs on the platform, and they can continue to make games if they really want to, but you can't beat the original trilogy of Gears of War. They're absolutely fantastic games. So if you can play them in 8K at 120 FPS, then you bet your bottom dollar people are going to pay it to play it that way. And if that's available on the market, no one in their right mind is going to go, right, I'm going to go play it in standard definition at 30 FPS on the Xbox 360. Yes, you can play it HD, but you get the idea. 720p these days isn't really classed as HD. So if you collect for the PS2, the Xbox 360, the PS3, in my personal opinion, if you're collecting for value's sake and you're collecting because you want your collection to be worth money in the future, you're wasting your time. You'll get the odd game that will go up in price, absolutely. But for the most part, these games are never really going to increase that much. And I'm not that bothered about that personally, because I don't buy Xbox 360 games because I want them to be worth money in the future. Don't get me wrong, I would absolutely love it if every game on that shelf behind me was all of a sudden worth 50 quid each. But that's not why I buy them. And it does actually fill me with a little bit of confidence, having looked at the prices and the way that prices change and they react and they go up and they come down, that the games that I see now that are too expensive, Saw 2 is a prime example. I will not pay £35 for that game because it's not worth it. It's just not a good game. I do want it in the collection because I have the first one. I absolutely adore the Saw franchise as like films. I love them. There isn't a bad one in my opinion. I could watch them time and time again and I'll never get bored of them. So I do want the second game. I'm happy to pay around 20 quid for it. And I'm confident that it will eventually come back down. I don't think it will continue to rise. It might go up to 40, 50 before it does, but we saw it with Spec Ops The Line. That game went up to 40, 45 pound. And now you can buy it for like 12 because it came back down. And that's what the majority of the games on these platforms do. Not everyone will get a remake, not everyone will get a remaster, but that doesn't necessarily matter. There were so many of these games made, and you can still go and buy and play the majority of them on the online stores. You can just go on to Game Pass and a lot of them are available on there, or you can go and buy them through the store. A lot of people thought just because they were closing the 360 store down that all these games would disappear forever. Well, didn't really happen. You can still go and buy them through the Xbox store today, and I don't think that that's going to change anytime soon. And this of course is absolutely not financial advice by any stretch of the imagination. If you want to go and buy into a PS2 or a 360 because you think it's going to go up in value over time and all the games that you buy are going to make you a fortune, go for it. I hope you're right. But in my opinion, and for my collecting journey, I'm not buying games to try and make a fortune out of them. I never really did that anyway, but I'm absolutely not doing it now. And I'm not going to panic buy a game because it's all of a sudden 35 quid when it used to be 15 2 years ago. Yes, things go up in price, but as I've seen a lot of times with Xbox 360 games in particular, a lot of them come back down in price. And if I'm wrong, and Saw 2 ends up becoming this £60-70 game, and in 3 years' time I'm thinking, well, if I bought that for 35, I would have saved myself a hell of a lot of money. Well, I'm wrong, and that's just the way it goes, right? But I can absolutely see most of these games rebounding back down at some point. I've paid over the odds for the odd game here or there. I never really go too much over it. I can wait. I do have patience. I'm quite lucky in that sense. But if you're one of those ones that have just seen a game that you want and it's just gone too far out of your scope and you are thinking of breaking the bank to buy it, just ask yourself a question. Do you absolutely need it, or can you maybe risk waiting to see if that comes back down in price? Web of Shadows on the 360 was a game that people just saw going up and up, and it's the same on the PS3. It's actually the same price now. They're both 85 quid, but that game went over £100 not that long ago, and I saw someone buy it actually. A YouTuber bought it, showed it, oh, finally got it complete with a manual. It was like £105 it cost her, I think. 85 quid now. Will that go up again? Maybe. Will it come down again? Possibly. Who knows? In my opinion, it probably will come down before it goes back up again, and maybe it will go up, and yes, it'll come back down. And that's just exactly what's going to happen. And if you're happy to pay £100 for a game, and you think it's going to continue to fly, then go for it, right? Don't let anyone tell you you're wrong. But in my opinion, all these games will eventually come back down to a reasonable level before they go back up again. I mean, you'll get the odd one that will remain stupidly high. Kuon is a crazy expensive game, but even that has dropped like £75 in not that long a time. So it can happen. But for the most part, these systems are super cheap to buy into, and in my personal opinion, they always will be. I just don't think we'll ever see the same pattern in prices as we have done for the Mega Drive, the Super Nintendo. I don't think that the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, the original Xbox for the most part anyway, I don't think those games will ever become as expensive as the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo games. I don't think in 30 years' time, when we're at the point where the Mega Drive is now in sort of time gone by, I don't think every single PlayStation 2 game is going to be £10 complete with a manual. I still think you'll be able to buy them for 50 pence or £1. Whereas, like I said, if you go back and try and buy a full, complete, good condition Mega Drive game, generally speaking, it's going to cost you £10 plus. Yeah, you'll get the odd bargain, I know, I get it. But for the most part anyway, they are all £10 plus. I don't think that's ever going to happen with the PlayStation 2, and I definitely don't think it's ever going to happen with the Xbox 360 and the PS3. I think times have changed, and we're still stuck on that, well, in the future it'll be worth money, because that's how life works. But it's not always how life works. And in this case, I definitely don't think it will be, and it's going to be the same for DVDs. So let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think it'll always be cheap to buy into PlayStation 2 and Xbox 360 games? And of course, including PlayStation 3, original Xbox in that as well. And I do think it'll be the case for PlayStation 4, Xbox One in particular, and of course into the PS5 and the Series X. I think those will become cheaper as time goes on. And I think it'll always be, or there'll always be accessible consoles to buy into compared to that of the older systems, for reasons I've already mentioned in this video and I won't go over again. I will take a trip to CEX very soon, and I'll have a little look around my local, because like I said, it's been well over 4 weeks since I've actually been in there. 4 weeks in the world of CEX is a long time. Things will definitely have changed, and I've only really flicked through the website to get a general gist of the prices of the Xbox 360. I had a very quick look at some PS2 stuff, but I've not looked at much of anything else, the Series X, the Xbox One, the PS5 and stuff. So I will go in and have a little look around there, so you can look forward to that if you're into that kind of thing. Hopefully you won't have to wait too much longer till my next video, and until the next time, goodbye.